Hello and welcome everybody to this week's video where I'm going to be talking about how to incorporate these beautiful singing bowls into your Reiki and meditation practice. This is a viewer request video that I've had from some members of the Usui Reiki Ryoho support and community group that I manage on Facebook. If you're not in that group yet and you'd like to join, the link is in the video description below. And the question for that was specifically how and when do I incorporate singing bowls into my Reiki practice, and what are the benefits? So I want to start off by investigating the bowl itself that I would use for the practice. And I have one of my many different singing bowls with me here today. This is the one that I incorporate, I would say, the most. And it is probably 14 inches or so across. You can see it's quite a large bowl, right? This is a heart tuned bowl, so that is in the note of F. It's not really super important on that, just wanted to clarify for the video. But this bowl in and itself, what I really love about it and why I like to incorporate it is because of the tone that it makes. I'm not sure if that's going to come up on the video or not, but also the weight and the size of the bowl, right? And I'll get to why that's important in a little bit in this video. So when do I incorporate these bowls into a session? There's a number of different ways I think that are pretty effective to incorporate singing bowls into a session. For me, I really like to start with the bowl, especially when people are really stressed, or for students or clients or individuals that have a really active and busy mind. And the reason I love to start with the bowls with these types of clients is that this experience can be really intense. It can be really overpowering in a good way, right? In a very good way. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean overpowering in the sense that it is going to supersede the busyness of the mind. So when I'm working with a bowl, again, that is about this size, we want to combat the busyness of that individual's mind. So the weight, the size, the heaviness, the depth of the tone, all of those things are going to help push the individual into a state where they supersede the busyness of their mind, okay? And remember, in Reiki, that's super important. The focus of Reiki is not healing. It's Ansen Ritsume. It's a quiet mind. So we want to bring people into an experience of a quiet mind. How do we do that if it's an individual who can't let go? It's an individual whose mind is just plagued with stress and, a to-do list that never ends and so on. These bowls are a great way to do that. When I was working in Hong Kong, and when these bowls were with me in Hong Kong, I would quite often bring them to the Vitality Center where I still work, but just have the bowls here with me now in France. I'd utilize these bowls with people who have high intensity careers like bankers and lawyers and so on, and also with kids with attention issues, ADHD, Tourette's, and things like that, right? And I would find that that would push them into a state of stillness. And so utilizing these bowls, there's two methods to really kind of incorporate these into a session. The first method that I would really use as my go-to or my standard is just simply playing them next to somebody's head. So they might be laying down on the table. Imagine somebody's head is right here, and then I would have maybe one or two bowls next to their ears. Or if I just have one bowl, then I would put it in front of their head, right? And so I would just hit very gently both bowls. And I would keep that situation going, keep that experience moving for about 10 or 15 minutes. Because what happens in that is the focal point becomes very quickly the vibration of the bowl. It can become very overwhelming. Like even as I'm filming this video right now, it sounds very quiet. I've just struck the bowl, as you could see, it sounds very quiet. But if I was to have my head right next to the bowl, it'd be very difficult to even hear my voice. For those of you who experienced these types of singing bowls before, these Tibetan brass or metallic singing bowls, you know what I mean? You don't need to hit it very hard for that to be a very intense experience, a very beautiful experience. And so after about 10 minutes of just playing a bowl like this next to somebody's head, they're going to be in a very relaxed space, and then I would simply transition into the Reiki practice or to the Reiki session for the duration of our session together. And now the second way that I would incorporate these bowls, and I want to preface this bit here with a word of caution. You need to be more experienced with the practice. Please don't just jump into this one. It's definitely not dangerous per se. There's definitely an increased chance here where there could be a little bit of uncomfortableness, or there could be an accident or so on, and I'll explain what I mean. And placing the bowls on the body and then striking the bowls with the mallet on the body. And it's a very beautiful experience because the vibration of the bowl goes through the body. Quite often this is called a Tibetan bowl massage or a singing bowl massage, where you've placed bowls over the person's body and you're striking them so that the vibration and the sound, both are forms of energy, by the way, both of those go through the body and they enhance the ability of one to release and relax, right? Think of it like a sonic massage through the body. And further to that, the weight of the bowl is very comforting on the body. This bowl, I would guess, weighs about, I don't know, probably about 10 pounds, probably about 5 kilos, something like that. So if you have this on the chest, it becomes very comforting, right? To have this weight on the individual's body is a constant pressure that becomes very familiar. It becomes very comforting. It becomes reassuring that the person can let go, that they can just release into the experience, right? Now, the thing that I'm saying that is a little bit difficult with these, and I'm laughing because I've definitely had this happen, people have an idea that they should have more bowls on the person. Like they should have, a bowl on the chest, maybe one on the lower stomach, maybe some down by the knees, maybe one above the head, and then they're playing everything in unison and making sure that that experience is ongoing and so on. That's great. It's really beautiful if you can do that, but it's kind of like juggling. You have to make sure that not only the bowls are playing, but also that they all remain stable. And you won't think of that until it's too late, I bet. That's what's happened to me. So here's the two things that can go wrong in this situation. First off, the bowl could fall off the person, right? If you're not paying attention to it, it can fall off. Probably won't cause any harm to the person, but it's going to make a really loud noise if it hits the ground, right? Second off, a bowl can touch another bowl while they're both vibrating, and it's a really abrasive, really strong metallic noise that is going to ruin the session. So you need to really be conscious of both of those when you're playing these bowls. I mean, this bowl, again, it's like, 10 pounds or whatever. I wouldn't want this on my chest or on the, the body of a client, for instance, and then to have it fall off and hit their arm. It's obviously not ideal. And for you as a professional who is providing this service to somebody, it's not a good look. I've had it happen to me. So please don't make the same mistake, right? Don't make the same mistake. And when we're playing the bowls like that, and when you're working over the body, that vibration into the body is, like I was saying before, it becomes an overwhelming experience. It becomes an experience where the person is almost forced to let go. And that becomes a very beautiful segue into the practice of Reiki, right? Into the ability to move into the practice of Reiki. I found that with people, again, going back to kids in particular, when I'm working with kids who have attention issues and so on, that experience is really, really powerful for them. It brings them into a space that is maybe unfamiliar, but also very freeing, very liberating. It brings them into a space where their mind is kind of finally letting go, or not kind of, perhaps even fully letting go and resting. These minds are running, 1,000 miles per second. They're nonstop. So if you're in a situation where you can finally rest as a child, and you can finally let go of that hyperactivity in the mind, then all of a sudden this is a space that becomes very liberating. It becomes very freeing. It's like deep sleep, right? And with some people who are definitely very sensitive to sound, that is going to do it when Reiki might not be able to do it, right? Somebody who's sensitive to sound is going to obviously gravitate to the experience of the bowls way quicker than they are, in particular children, I've found in my experience anyways, than they will with just hands-on healing. Especially conscious of listeners in maybe the Americas. All of my sessions with kids are obviously with the parents in the room. So you want to make sure that you have that as well. You want to make sure you're either at a center or at your own private practice where that is not a problem. Because all the legality and all that type of stuff out of the way, we just want to make sure that the kid feels comfortable, right? They need to make sure that they feel like they can trust, they can let go, they can be in that space and they're safe, right? And a family member is most likely going to facilitate that quite a lot. So let me just rewind and go back to the very beginning of this and give some information as to why I started to incorporate sound into my practice in the first place. Now, obviously, my main focus is Reiki. My main focus of my career is Reiki, to a lesser extent meditation, but I'm a teacher, and that's quite important for this story. That's why I'm bringing it up here. This is a true story. So I was in Hong Kong. I had one of my clients that came to me who was suffering from, I won't give any specifics here, but they were suffering from something that impacted their hearing, right? And they had gone to so many different people in Hong Kong, doctors, holistic health practitioners, and so on. And one of the people they went to go and hopefully try to alleviate this condition with their hearing was a sound healer in Hong Kong. And the conversation came up as like, okay, well, why are these bowls going to help me? How are they going to help me? And this is essentially the back and forth. So, you know, the client comes in to the practitioner. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm super excited for this. I've heard a lot of good things about it. Can you tell me why this works? The practitioner is saying, because it's energy and energy heals. Okay. So then the client's like, oh, I get that. I understand. That's why I'm here. But can you explain why? And they're like, because sound is a form of energy and energy is the process of healing. Okay. But how? How is that going to impact where I'm at right now? Because it's energy. Okay. You know, there's a problem here. And as a teacher, first and foremost, to me, this is very, very important. Most of you are teachers. Most of you are teaching other students. To me, I think the thing that we can never lose sight of is the depth of our practice. In this space of holistic wellness, Reiki, meditation, sound healing, and so on, it's so easy, to the detriment of all of those practices, it's so easy to become a practitioner and a teacher in those different modalities. And because it's so easy, what ends up happening is there's hundreds and hundreds of people, or an infinite amount of people who are there, who are teaching, who are guiding other people, but they have no depth of knowledge, right? I've made tons of videos about this on my channel. Don't be the teacher who, when asked this question from a client, you can't give a response. If you can't give a response, then your client is going to see through you immediately, right? You're there to help these people, maybe as your students, maybe you're helping them learn, right? A practice like Reiki or meditation or whatever, or maybe you're there with your client to assist them on their own journey with healing. In both of those instances, it's super important to understand your practice, to understand what you are giving to your client. What are you teaching them? What are you delivering? What experience are the two of you embarking on together? Because they're looking to you for your guidance. They're looking to you for your leadership. They're looking to you for your depth of understanding. And so when I heard this story from my client, I was like, wow, this is where we are in these practices. There's so many people that believe that they've figured something out, when indeed we have to keep learning and we have to keep exploring. We have to keep going further. We have to constantly dive into the self. We have to constantly perfect and work on our practice and our trade, right? And we need to do that so that we don't end up in that situation where your clients will be like, you don't know kind of what you're talking about, right? When you talk to somebody who knows their trade and knows their topic at depth, then you're going to stay with that person. You're going to be reassured, right? So when I heard this from my clients, it's like, okay, maybe there's something that I can do here, because I have, maybe you know this about me, maybe you don't. I have a background in astronomy. I've got a background in physics. I have a degree in it. I used to teach it, astronomy in particular. And part of all of that understanding and that background is an exploration of sound as a form of energy, right? It's super important in astrophysics. It's a big part of astronomy. So it's something that I've studied quite a lot. And the ability to distill that down into a language that is appropriate to people, and so that they can understand what is happening here, so that it's not just a discussion like, oh, energy heals because it's sound, because sound heals because it goes into the body and heals. But what? But how? But when? But why? right? So all of those things are, to me anyways, they're super important. And those are things that I bring across in my sound training, which is called the Science of Sound. You can find it on Roots of Life. It's a full certification program for sound practitioners. Now, why would we want to incorporate all of this then again into the practice? Once we have maybe done a singing bowl massage or placed the bowls around the body and simply played them, the individual is going to be that much more relaxed, right? Some people are going to gravitate towards sound while others won't. Now, those ones who gravitate towards sound, after the sound has been incorporated into your session, move into the Reiki, right? Or move into the meditation practice. And then the two complement each other very beautifully. Now, let me just try to break that down a little bit as to what in theory is happening when we incorporate sound or singing bowls into these practices. The main discussion, or the main benefit, to me anyways, is based off of the oscillation of the sound wave. So when you hit a singing bowl, and in particular the Tibetan singing bowls, you can hear two, perhaps sometimes even three very distinct different tones or different sounds that are produced by the bowl. Now, when we have this oscillation of sound, what I mean by that is you'll hear a high wave, and as that starts to go back down into its trough, when it starts to get lower, then you might hear another high frequency come up. Those waves are going to be interference patterns, right? So they're going to be at different peaks and troughs. They're going to be at different frequencies. They're going to be at different rhythms. The mind is not going to understand how to incorporate or to assimilate the information or the sound that is coming from those bowls, right? And so what I mean by that is, I'll give an example. So let me give an example here. If I have a bowl that is perhaps on my right ear, right? So imagine the bowl that I was showing earlier, just sitting right by my right ear and the practitioner is hitting it. My focus, because that experience is going to be so overwhelming, then my mental focus is going to be driving towards the sound and the vibration that's being produced by that bowl. So all of the other experiences in the room, the attachments and the thoughts and all of that are going to start to settle down, because that's going to become so overwhelming, right? It's going to be the only thing that I can probably hear. That's super important, because what I'm hearing is a peak and a trough from multiple different sound waves that are coming out of the bowl, multiple different frequencies, right? And at some point, my brain is going to become overwhelmed by those frequencies in a good way, in a good way, not a bad way. What I mean by that is we are going to struggle to try to maintain an awareness with the sound that comes out of the bowl, but because there's multiple sounds coming out of it at different pitches, different frequencies, different rhythms, then our mind is eventually going to just give up. We're not going to be able to understand where it's coming from. The information is too chaotic in a way, like it's too random, so we won't be able to stay with it in a logical sense. And that logical mind, that's exactly what we want to be quieted in these sessions, right? So that's going to further be facilitated by not just one bowl, but maybe two. So maybe one on each ear, or maybe one as well above the head, where you have all of this different information coming in from all of these different bowls. If they're played in a sequence that is equally confusing to the mind, then the person, the client, is most likely going to fall into a place of stillness that much quicker. Now, confusing to the mind, what I mean by that is I'm going to be hitting maybe one bowl on the right, maybe one bowl on the left, maybe again on the left, on the right, maybe on the crown, on the right. You know, you're moving all over the place, so there's nothing that is identifiable, or there's nothing that is repetitive in the situation or the experience for the client. That lack of repetition is super important, because it's going to fatigue the ego, or the situational awareness of the mind. So I hope that bit makes sense. So as we go into that experience and we let go of the conscious-driven or attached mind, we arrive quicker to Ansen Ritsumi, right? We arrive quicker to the space where we can just heal. And that is, to me, the beauty of incorporating these bowls. There's always a discussion, and a very valid discussion, mind you, about the sound and the vibration moving through the body, moving through the meridians of the body or the nervous system, working on different organs and so on. Like you heard me say earlier, that bowl is tuned to F, and it's for the heart. And that's all very true. That's all very real. But all of that loses its meaning if we experience Ansen Ritsume, if we experience the space where there is no mind, right? If there's no mind, then you might have a client that has a hearing issue. You might have a client that has high blood pressure or kidney issues or whatever it might be, or maybe just anxiety or different emotions that are trapped in the body. If the mind is at peace, then those things will leave the body much quicker, right? Or we can assess the area of trauma from a more neutral and focused perspective. The body itself is craving balance always. Everything in the universe is craving balance always. That's a definition of energy, right? So energy will remain constantly in a state of equilibrium unless acted on by an outside force. Everything is seeking balance. So we can look at the ideas of things like disease or illness or attachment or suffering or whatever you want to call it from a space of a lack of balance. If the bowls help the client get to a point where there is no mind to comprehend the idea of no balance, then our body just naturally gets things out of the way. It accelerates the healing process because of our ability to return to neutrality, right? And that's, to me, the key. Now, in my course, I'm going through all of these things. Like, we need to know what the different meridians are from a Chinese medicine perspective. We need to know what the different functions of the organs are from a Western perspective, how all of those things are aligned together. It's not just that we need to know those things from the practitioner's perspective for our own practice. And it's not just that we need to know that so that we can answer all of those questions as well, that come from our potential clients. But it's also further just the fact that we can hold space, right? We can't do things professionally if we haven't learned it. A great example of that is Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours idea of mastery, like going in to these things with enough repetition so that we understand it. Why is that important? Because it's all about you holding space. It's all about you knowing what you do, right? If you don't know what you do, then you're not going to hold space effectively. The very first, here's a perfect example. I'm going to throw myself to the wolves here. And I hope this is reassuring to a lot of you. The very first, my God. All right. The very first meditation that I did with singing bowls, I was telling everybody, wow. I was telling everybody to make sure all of your phones are off, right? Make sure your phones are off. Everybody's phone is off so we don't disturb the class, right? Guess whose phone was still on? Mine. And of course, I only figured that out because I got a phone call right in the middle of the meditation. On top of that, I didn't have things organized well. I didn't have the space set up correctly. It was all just a complete mess. It was a complete mess. This was in Hong Kong. I wonder if by chance if anybody who was in that meditation by chance is watching this video, you'll remember the meditation with 100% clarity because it was a complete train wreck. It was like a poster child meditation for everything that you shouldn't do in a practice, right? I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the practice. I wasn't ready for the singing bowls. I didn't understand what they were. I didn't understand how to incorporate them. That was a sign that I needed to go deeper into the practice. I needed to study. I needed to learn. I needed to go back to my training in physics, in astronomy, and incorporate all of that to understand why I'm doing this thing. Because otherwise, why am I doing it, right? I think that's a question that everybody in the wellness world needs to ask themselves. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this practice? The thing that you just learned, do you know it well enough to be able to hold space for other people? Is your depth of practice of Reiki, for instance, deep enough that you can explain everything that may come up to your clients? Nobody's practice is perfect, right? But what I'm trying to elicit here is this idea of the need to constantly study. That's part of doing our work honestly, after all, which is one of the precepts of Usui Reiki Ryoho. And so let me just then move on here to some of the potential drawbacks of incorporating sound into a practice. The first one is probably a non-issue, but I'm going to bring it up anyways. Sometimes people just don't like sound, right? Sometimes people are not going to want the experience to be incorporated. Now, I'm saying this is a non-issue because if they don't want it, they probably won't be attending your class. So why would they be there, right? The problem is the person who is going to find out in your class that they don't like singing bowls. So how do you hold space for that person? Well, they're just going to have to go through the experience, try to let go, try to find a calm or peaceful mind, and just recognize that maybe that's not their vehicle, that's not their mode of experience, and that's fine, right? That's completely fine. Here's another issue that's going to come up for you, right? And this is where you need to be sharp. This is where I think, in reality, your professionalism is really going to come out. What's going to happen when you have the closet musician in your singing bowl session, right? What's going to happen when you have the closet music professional? I don't mean closet like they're hiding it from the world. I mean you don't know that, right? So that individual is going to come in, or perhaps not even a musician, by the way, but just somebody with perfect pitch. Maybe they have a really, really acute sense of hearing, right? They're going to know that you don't know how to play the bowls correctly very quickly. I've been there again, right? I've had people who have done that, who came in, they're like, listen, I just don't like it because you're not playing bowls in a logical sequence. And if you do end up having a situation like that, or a client like that, I implore you to please talk to them, right? I don't have perfect pitch hearing. I don't have a musical background. I don't have any semblance of knowledge prior to really diving into the singing bowls about music or about any type of musical theory or anything like that. So as soon as somebody came and they started talking about this, I was so grateful to hear that, because I immediately was like, can I just throw some questions to you, and can you just give me an idea from a musical sense? And then that brought me onto a whole experience, a whole line of investigation where I was seeking out music professionals. So again, maybe a lot of you know this about me, or maybe not, but I used to be a school teacher. I used to be a secondary school teacher. So I would go to the music teachers. I would go to people, or even to the students that have a really strong background in music, and I would ask them questions about music theory to help me understand how to play the bowls in a more effective manner so that I can be more all-inclusive. See, to me, here's the thing. The person who has normal hearing, or a normal or general understanding of music or whatever it might be, they're there just for the experience. They're going to let go. You've already got them set. Doesn't make any difference, right? It's in that group of 20 people, are you going to be able to meet the professional, the music professional, with where they are? Is your experience going to be one that a professional will gravitate to or resonate with? Because here's what you want to avoid. At the end of that session, if you have Q&A and if you have discussions and so on, I'm talking about a meditation, like a group meditation or a group singing bowl meditation. If you end up having Q&A and that person asks you a question that you can't answer, well, then you don't look very professional in front of 20 other people, right? That's a big problem. Now, again, even if you're in a private setting and you've got somebody who's got really acute hearing, if you're not playing the bowl correctly, then they're not going to be relaxed enough to get into the practice of Reiki. So if that's what your sequence is, you first play the bowl and then you move into Reiki, that individual is probably still going to be fixated on the lack of continuity throughout the singing bowl experience, and they're not going to be able to let go within your Reiki experience. And then that means that they probably won't be coming back to you as a client. They'll be going somewhere else. So, all of these things are super important to make sure that you're incorporating. I'm not trying to make it sound like an impossible feat. What I'm saying here is constantly study, constantly do your work, right? Constantly go into it. The individual who actually prompted this question, this is one of the things that I'm bringing up because I'm so grateful that in the question about this video, asking me to make this video, the individual is stating how many times they've learned from how many different teachers they've actually sought out and looked at and worked with and investigated sound from. That's what I think everybody should be doing, right? You should be doing that with Reiki. You should be doing that in meditation, with everything in life. You don't just find one person and then go with them forever, right? You should be constantly digging deeper and deeper and deeper so that you can become more and more and more entrenched in the thing that you love. In this case, maybe it's singing bowls, maybe it's Reiki, whatever it might be. Learn that thing, right? Master that thing. Give your 10,000 hours towards the mastery of that thing. Why is that important? Well, going back to what I was saying earlier, for better or worse, in the holistic world, there are far too many people that have just started, and now they think they know it, and they think they can teach it, and they think they've got it understood, and they're still attached to the mind. They're still attached to the ego. They're still attached to the idea that they have something that others can't, or they have something that others don't, or they have something that can assist or aid or benefit others. That might all be well and true, but there's another step. There's always that other step of stillness, right? And we can't let go of things that we don't understand. That's not entirely true. That's not, before I get hit in the comments about that, let me explain what I mean. That's not entirely true. We can let go of things that we don't understand. However, the need to attach by the mind to the things that we don't understand is a function of fear, right? And we're all gripped with fear, because fear is in many ways the main function of the ego. So we fear what we don't understand, right? So if we try to do things that we're not ready for, like you've just learned Reiki and now you're going to take clients, okay, maybe, but surrender to the practice. So you've got yourself some singing bowls, great. Learn them, fully learn them, right? Learn how to incorporate them. And then finally start working on maybe your friends, people who are going to give you loving, honest, and very, very constructive feedback. Super important, right? So you end up not to make the mistakes that I made, right? Where I was rushing it and going in and thinking I'm going to lead meditations and all that type of stuff. There's no point, right? Just go into the practice. So let me conclude this video by one other thing here that is, to me, that is really frustrating within the world of sound healing, is all the pretense and the hyperbole around it. So these Tibetan bowls, that one that I was showing at the beginning of the video, that is, I bought those myself. I went to Nepal to get them direct, because quite often there's such an insane markup. There's such an insane amount of story on the bowls. There's such an insane amount of, like, with Tibetan bowls in particular, I know many of you listening will probably hear this. You've probably already heard this. People will say things like, yeah, this is an antique singing bowl. It's 500 years old. It used to be in a temple. It was blessed by all these monks and da-da-da. It wasn't. It most likely wasn't anyways. And if it was, there's no way to verify that, so it probably wasn't. What's really happening here is you're just paying more for a thing that somebody probably got at its source, maybe in Nepal or India or wherever, and they probably finished it to make it look old. The same thing with crystal bowls. Every crystal bowl and every vendor that's selling crystal bowls online is getting them from the same place in China, right? It's always the same. So there's all of these different adjectives that are added, like alchemy this and crystal gems and all these things, superfluous things that are being talked about in these bowls. The only thing that's happening here is you're overpaying for the bowls. That's it. Sound is sound, right? Vibration is vibration. That's it. Energy is energy. That's it. There's no need for all of these different things, these different adjectives, these different names and different types of bowls and all that type of stuff. Utilize what you're familiar with. Utilize what you're comfortable with. If we look at the world of sound healing like this and the way that we can incorporate it into Reiki, I think what we can do here is we can try to have an honest approach, right? Go into your depth of learning. Seek out bowls from people who are not selling you a story, who are just selling you quality, right? Or go directly to the source. That's what I do. I link my students up in my classes to get them directly from the source so they don't end up paying, 2 or 3 times the amount for their bowls. Incorporate the singing bowls in a way that you're comfortable with, that is going to give the best experience to your clients, that is going to give the best overall healing experience to your clients. And then, in my opinion anyways, finally, let them have the experience. This is, again, an area where I think far too many practitioners are happy to interject their own opinions. The experience of the client within Reiki or within singing bowls or meditation or whatever is their unique experience, right? We are there to help assist from a state of neutrality. Because if my mind or my experience in my body is attached to their journey, then I'm not practicing Ansen Ritsumei, right? If I'm sitting there playing my alchemy singing bowls and I'm acting like I'm creating this grand spectacle for everybody to experience these esoteric, metaphysical, grandiose experiences, then I'm attached to my own egotistical beliefs, right? Let go. Let the sound do the work. Let the energy do the work. Let Reiki do the work. We need to get out of the way for that to happen, right? And one main component of that, in my opinion, is our depth of knowledge. If we don't have that depth of knowledge, then we're going to attach to the story, maybe out of insecurity, maybe out of fear, maybe out of wonder, maybe just out of the genuine desire to help others and to assist others, but still all of those are attachments, right? So we have to learn and learn and learn and learn. Keep going deeper and deeper into the practice and let go, right? So I hope that helps everybody. I hope that helps your practice. I hope you find that to be beneficial to the incorporation of sound into your practice. It is indeed a beautiful way to help people on their own healing journey. And, I'd love to hear how you found that video, and I'd love to hear how you find the incorporation of sound with your clients. Thank you, everybody. As always, be well and In Gassho.